Hello.
Ricordi.
Welcome, guys. Welcome, everyone. We have another treat for you. I know my class had the treat of having Paul Banke before, but Commander's class didn't get the luxury of having him, having to hear his story. So I wanted to bring Paul Zanon, the one who wrote Paul's book. So now both of them can conversate and we can talk to them about how this came about and give you guys a nice treat right before you go to Thanksgiving vacation. And for the Commander's class, Paul Banke is a world champion boxer who won the World Championship in 1980.
Right.
I'm sorry, what is it?
Right.
Oh, 1990, okay. Okay, well, it doesn't matter, 10 years, that's it now. And so we are, we're very happy that he is here with us, and I just wanted to congratulate him and just wanted to have a little bit of our formal expectations, which I know you guys are amazing, but just be positive, respectful, and ask questions. If at any time you have a question, go ahead and type it on the chat. I will be reading it. And Paul, I thought about bringing you Zanon into here because you spent a whole year with this guy, with Paul Banke, and so go ahead, Paul. Take it away from here. Tell us a little bit about your story as a writer, and then.
Go
ahead.
Okay. So thank you for having me here.
It's an honor
and pleasure to be sharing airtime with everyone on here. So a big hug out to everyone out there from sunny London. It's actually not sunny. It's really damp and miserable weather. But that's England for you. The people are nice. The weather's rubbish. So I've been writing for a few years. I write for a number of publications, websites as well. I write for Ring magazine as well, which is obviously a US publication. But I've written a few books, and about 3 years ago, a guy called John Maresca got in touch with me on LinkedIn, and he said, "I've got a story for you." And I didn't roll my eyes. I probably did. And as I read the message, and I thought, if I had a buck for every time somebody said they had a story, I'd be a very rich man, because I get approached a number of times every week, and they say, "Here's my story." So I look at it and I think, yeah, it's not even as interesting as my life, and that's not interesting at all. So then John popped me a synopsis of a story, Mr. Banke, and I read it, and he said he's going to make friends with you on Facebook, and then he said he'll organise a time to sort of have a chat. By the time I finished reading John's email, next thing I get a phone call through from Paul Banke himself, sort of saying, "Hi, how are you?" And John did tell me, he said, once you've spoken to him, he said, you're going to fall in love with the guy. He said he's got a lovely way, man. So all the time. Right on both counts. Paul has got a lovely woman character, and yes, he does call you all the time, but it is always great to speak with him because he's very, very uplifting as a person. But there's got to be a few key selling points whenever you're writing a book. You've got to imagine you want to get it on a shelf. You want it to do well. You want people to sort of go, "Wow, did that actually happen?" If it didn't happen, you'd almost think someone had to make it up because it was that good. I started going through. I'd seen Paul's fights, but I didn't know his backstory. And I've written a number of boxing books, and a few of them become bestsellers. And when I've kind of interviewed the people and asked them, "Tell me about your story," it's usually I was a boxer, then I kind of went off the rails, and that was it. And I came from a tough background. There was all of that with Paul, plus big doses of loads of other stuff, and that's it. So we spent a year chatting a few times a week. Paul would call me early in the early hours at about 3 a.m. his time, which was 11 a.m. my time in London, and we would chat for about an hour, and then he'd go off and he'd do his exercise, or whatever he was doing in the mornings, and that was it. So yeah, we did it all on video, which was important. We looked at each other in the eyes, and if you look at someone in the eyes, you can always tell a lot. If they look to the side, they look up, look down. And if I'd have done all these phone calls on just a regular communication without the video capacity, he could have easily have answered the questions and skipped away. But when I'd ask him something like, how did that affect you? And I'd see his eyes rolling somewhere. I go, right, I'll make a note to myself, come back to that question, approach it in a different way. I slowly opened him up like I can. And he was fantastic. He gave me all the answers that I needed. And we spoke to some great fighters and people, the likes of Freddie Roach, Manny Pacquiao, just to be one of the Paul there's so many phenomenal anecdotes that suddenly popped out of it. So yeah, we wrote the book. It came out last year, and I am just so delighted that it's happened, because in 100 years' time, everyone on this call is going to be dead and buried. That's a reality, unless people start living beyond the 150, whatever. Because I'm 48. So, but one thing's for sure: in 100 years' time, Paul Banke's book will still be around, and people will still know what he's done, how he did it. His legacy will live on forever, as long as there are pieces of literature out there.
Very good. So for those that want to be writers, there is a little introduction for you guys as well, another perspective. And Julieta, do you have
should I say something? Yeah, so Paul Zanon, the writer, Paul the writer. So for the record, my brother was also a very good boxer in Bulgaria, and his name is Paul as well.
It's a good name.
Paul Clifford, yes, I know. So it's a very interesting coincidence. So you said you wrote, again, for maybe people who want to write or, to get a story. When you choose the person you want to write about, what is the main thing you're looking? I know everybody has a story, and you said you wrote a lot of sports, book for boxers. How did you choose them? Like, what is the crossing point? You have to have.
I'll be honest, I only ever approached one client. I've been, for all my books, apart from one, I've always been approached. And so I just listen to stories. But in response to that, what made you choose the particular ones that I've decided to write about? There has to be a unique selling point, something that's different. With Paul, there was very different things. For example, AIDS. He was the first American boxer to actually be diagnosed with AIDS, HIV at the time. But everyone remembers Tommy Morrison because of sort of Rocky V. But Paul Banke was that first person at a time where having AIDS was a death sentence. So there was all these questions to answer. Paul Banke was the first person to stop Hall of Fame boxer Daniel Zaragoza, who is a phenomenal fighter. And that fight, I can watch. I've probably watched it 50 times just for fun. It's a great fight. So other examples of books that I've done. First one I wrote, the guy did a 10-year prison sentence for attempted manslaughter and murder. Was a very good amateur boxer, sparred with Muhammad Ali, and then ended up by coming out of prison and training many world champions, including Billy Joe Saunders, who still fights now. And I'll give you something different. About 3 books in, I suddenly got a phone call one day from the strength and conditioning coach of one of my other books that I've written about. And the other book I've written about was a guy called Paul Ingle, who was a former featherweight champion of the world. And the strength and conditioning coach was called Neil. And he said, Paul, I've got a friend of mine. And I thought, oh, here we go. And he said, and apparently he's got a good life story. So I went, right. So he said, his friend has a friend who is a deep sea diver. And I went, Neil, what part of me looks like I'm interested in deep sea diving? I'm not a good swimmer. And he went, can you favour, can you at least speak to the guy? Just, you know, if you don't want to take it, just tell him you don't want to do it. So I said, okay, I'll speak to him. So I spoke to this guy called David Beckett, and very, very well spoken. So picks up the phone and said, hello, David here. I was like, hi, David. I said, it's Paul, you know, I'm the writer. And I said, in 1 minute, tell me why I should write your book. And first thing he did was he bounced me a question, and he said, have you ever dived before? And I went, yeah. I said, not very deep. I said, I've done 3 illegal scuba dives, one in Brazil, said one in Egypt, and one in Indonesia. And he said, they're not recommended, those illegal scubas. And I thought, great, he reprimanded me as well. So he said, how far did you dive? I said, about 18 feet. He said, how did it feel? I said, I felt like my head was going to explode. So I thought, right, let's bounce it back to him. I said, so how far have you dived? And he said, about 600 feet. I said, hold on a minute. Aren't you supposed to like implode or explode when you go to a certain depth? And he said, well, he said, we take 3 days to get to that depth. And then we would be living at the bottom of the ocean for a month at a time. And I was like, wow. I said, how big was the thing? And he said, it was about 9 feet by 12 feet. I said, how many people in there? He said, about 8 people in that little thing. And you'd be working in the water for about 12 hours a day. I was like, okay, we got a story. So there was loads of other things, a lot of death and destruction down there. He ended up being in charge of teams that would take dead bodies from wreckages. Aeroplanes would go down, helicopters, ships, and he'd be the guy in charge where they'd go down, literally pull the bodies out soon after it went down, literally within a matter of hours of it happening. So in answer to that, Giulietta, you'll just get a gut feeling that will tell you something is different here. There's a big selling point, and it's worth getting stuck in. And if I can get 1 or 2 key selling points, then I can work with that, and I can weave it into a very interesting story.
Yeah, but the point is, a lot of people write, one more thing, a lot of people write books and stories, but why your books are so engaging? What is your style? Like, maybe it's too far, but, you know, everybody writes a book.
No.
You can't read everything, you know, it's not promising. Why you're so promising?
So believe it or not, when I was at school, I failed English and mathematics many times over. I just probably wasn't the best student, to be honest, which is not maybe one of the things to be saying sort of on a platform like this, but there is a redeeming.
It's perfect.
I go around to prisons these days, and I actually talk about the power of reading and writing. And when I'm in the prisons, the first question I ask them is, who knows the difference between a verb, an adjective, an adverb, and a noun? And all the prisoners look at me and think, oh, I've got to put up with this mess for the next 3 hours. And then I very calmly turn around to them and say, well, listen, I don't know what any of those words mean, but I do know that I can string words together well. I can make them sound like you're sitting in front of the person who said them, and I can engage you into the story. I keep it simple, and I keep it engaging. I keep it short and sharp. So I guess that's the way that I write. That's my sort of method, and also practice. You know, I've got better as I've gone along. I've probably done about 600 or 700 interviews for various publications over the years, and I'm just finishing my 10th book at the moment. So I've probably taken a few kicks in the pants along the way from various editors, and those kicks have been invaluable. Always accept those kicks and relish them, because that's what's going to make you the better writer, the better person. Can't hear you, Olga.
Hi.
Okay, can you hear me? Yes.
Just about.
We have a comment from one of our students, and she said that it's very impressive. She looked you up already on Google, and that you have a lot of books. And congratulations for that. And so her question before was, what motivated you to keep writing?
What motivates me to keep writing?
What motivated you at the beginning, to keep writing?
Oh, okay, right. So this is a good little story, actually. So I was actually full-time. I was a business development director for a national charity, and the opportunity came up to write for a publication about boxing. It was quite a well-known national newspaper, and so skipping over that, I was doing that for about a year, and then one day the opportunity came for me to ghost the life of an autobiography. How that happened was, you know, you sometimes in life you need a bit of luck or a bit of sort of intervention that you can't understand. And I was on holiday reading a crime book, and in this crime book it mentioned about two families that have been hard done by. One was the Richardson family, the other one was the Tibbs family. So a couple of days later, I was in India, of all places, and I was walking down this dusty alleyway, and there was this old faded sign, and it said Tibbs Frankie, the original hot dog from Bombay. I thought, it's that word Tibbs again. Now, I knew the son of Jimmy Tibbs through boxing, and I got in touch with Mark. I popped him a long email. I said, I know your father's been asked many times, he's been approached many times to have his book written, but I'd love to have a go at doing it. I wasn't expecting him to come back. I was expecting him to say, listen, you know, the old man's had a listen, but he don't want to know. But this is what happened. I got an email the day after saying the old man would like to see you this Friday. I went, okay. So I went and met Jimmy, the biggest hands. Man, I've got big hands, but this guy's huge hands. And I got there, and he's proper old East Ender. You can Google him on YouTube and hear the way he speaks, and it's like this, like, right, Paul. So tell me about this. How the book's going to work, how long it will take. So we talked about it. He asked a million questions, and I was mentally drained. And I got it to about 3 hours. I said, Jimmy, I don't know, to be honest, what more I can sort of say here, apart from have a little think about it. And that was it. And he stood up and he said, Paul, let's start this. Let's start it on Monday. I was like, great. So the reason why I was very nervous all of a sudden, and where the motivation suddenly came from, was this. I walked out of the gym where Jimmy was, and as I walked out, I walked about 50 meters. I stopped in the middle of the road, a really rough part of East London. It's sort of road that, a little sort of narrow road. You did not stop. I mean, I didn't want to admit, but I stopped for a minute, and I thought to myself, right, let's get this into perspective. You've never written a book before. How do you write a book? How long is a book? How do you get a publisher involved? How does it work financially? Oh yeah, you've got a full-time job. You're going to need a sabbatical, and you've told this guy you're going to write your book, so you can't let him down. He's a you know, a well-known sort of East End gangster, and a lovely man though, a very good friend of mine. And I walked a little bit further, and I stopped with all that in my mind, and I thought, Paul, you can do this. There's your motivation right there. Everything says you've never done it before. Now it's time to do it. Now it's time to establish exactly how you're going to do it and make it happen. The best bit of advice I was given was keep writing it, and then send it off to it, send a summary to a publisher, and they'll let you know if you can write or not. So I got rejections from about 40 publishers, and in the end, one day about 9 o'clock at night, I've already handed my notice in at work, my 3-month handing notice. I had 2 weeks of that to go, and I get a phone call 9 o'clock at night, and it was Europe's biggest sports publisher, and they said, Paul, we've read your synopsis. And I thought, here we go, but it wasn't. They said, we'd like to offer you a contract. I was like, wow. I mean, to be honest, I just wanted to jump around and start screaming, but I very calmly said, that sounds great. So yeah, if you can pop over the details on an email, that'd be great. The second I hung up the phone, then I was jumping all around. But what it is, I had such a rookie attitude going into that book, and that's something I've never, ever lost. If at any moment you ever think you're the polished article or you are the absolute best at anything you do, that's the time to stop it and move on to something else. Me, I wake up every single day still thinking I have the rookie attitude, and that keeps me sharp. I keep thinking there's someone better out there who can write. This can be done better. It's never, ever, ever 100%. And if you can keep that at the forefront, what you're doing, you're going to love what you're doing. And if you've got a passion for the subject area, even better. As the old expression goes, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. Since I started writing, I haven't worked.
Wow, that's really good. So love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. And always keep learning. I constantly learn every single day from the students. It's incredible how much we can learn from them. So thank you for sharing your story. Now let's focus back into Paul Banke story. For those kids from that have not heard his story, his mom was a single mom, third generation Mexican who grew up around the Bay Area, and let's see, let me put this on speaker view, maybe. At pin, there you go. So you can just look straight. There
What am I
you go.
doing?
Yeah. So that's fine. A third generation whose mom was single mom, you from the union worker, and they moved from one area to another area. So Paul found a gym one time and started boxing. So you want to tell us one of the stories of what time, how old were you? How old were you when you started boxing, and why did you decide to start boxing? Paul, as you know, became a world champion back in 1990. So go ahead.
I started boxing. I played football, played baseball, and then what happened was, we moved around a lot back in the days. I'm a single parent mom, like a lot of single parent mother. And what happened was, my brother fought.
Louder.
Oh, can you hear me?
Louder.
Okay, people. My brother started boxing, so I started boxing with him. And I said, I jumped in and I started traveling. And at 12 years old, I started traveling a lot of places. At 14, I was traveling. At 15, I went to Ohio. At 16, I went to Ohio. Went to New Zealand. And New Zealand, my first country.
Start local. You're already going international, mister. So you went to one gym and you started boxing and you liked it, right? And then you went to another gym, and then tell us more about first.
Let me just sorry to interrupt. Let me just chuck in here, champ. You're missing out the most important thing. Why you decided to get into boxing? Your brother got a tracksuit, didn't he? And he got a medal, and you were like, I want some of that.
Okay.
Tell me about that.
Yeah. You know what happened? Because I played football and baseball, and 6 months I got one trophy. He fought one fight, got a trophy. I said, wow. So I had 176 amateur fights. I had a lot of trophies, a lot of medals and stuff. So it was all about the trophies and stuff. You know what I mean? It was a blessing. So it was a blessing I did that. You're right, Paul. It was a sport. You know, when you do a sport, you don't know if you play a sport, you don't know if you're going to travel. You might travel the next town over. Well, I was next state. At 15 years old, I went to Ohio, back east. At 16, I went to New Zealand. I mean, that's like, I've been in 12 countries, very blessed. For being a poor Mexican, it don't mean being poor, single parent mother, has to travel around the world was a blessing. You know, they did not know what I was going to do as a career. You know, my dream was to go to 84 Olympic Games. It was a great thing. It was fun. Being a young kid, I got the discipline. I got the parents and adults, my aunts and uncles, they respected me. Then I started fighting on ABC World Sports 3 times on ABC World Sports. I got popular in high school. I got a little exposure on the TV, and I still got that. I love that TV exposure. And then what happened was, it was cool. I had a great time. You know, my dream was to go to 84 Olympic Games. I lost Olympic trials. It hurt me. I went pro. And I mean, what?
No, that's great. You just go to the end, right? What is the process?
What's the process?
Go ahead, Paul.
I'll tell you what. New Zealand will never forget Paul Banke, because back then, when he was 16, the population in New Zealand was probably a few 100,000, maybe about 1 million. But he gets on this 747 plane, and it's obviously 2 decks. And Paul, being Paul, he was a chatty kid, and not only did he sort of walk around sort of the economy area, he decided to go all the way up the top and started hanging out with all the big guys. And when everyone was coming off the 747, the coach was there looking around and going, "We're missing one, and who is it?" And and they're like, "Paul Banke." So Paul comes off like a few minutes later, and all these guys from New Zealand sort of saying, "Oh, here's my details. You ever come back?" And we really enjoyed talking to you. And he was just a charming sweetheart. So everyone would have been talking about Paul Banke for years afterwards, not just for the fact that he did really well in the boxing out there, but just because he charmed his way in there. The only person who could get into business class on a 747 upstairs, Paul Banke, incredible.
I'm a nosy kid. I'm still nosy, and so I talked to. We're 13 hours on a plane. 13 hours on a plane. When you're 17 years old, 16 years old, 13 hours. I'm on a double-deck plane. I'm going to New Zealand. I'm going to talk to everybody. I'm going to talk very hyper. I talk to everybody on the plane.
You have to remember as well with Paul's amateur career, he had almost, was it 176 fights, champ?
What's that?
How many fights?
How many fights? 176, 178.
Yeah.
In the book says 176 fights, 150 wins, including fighting for Team USA in 12 countries.
There we go. So, and those 12 countries included the likes of Russia at a time where Russia really weren't vibing with the United States. And there's some footage out there of some of Paul's amateur bouts, and they were absolutely fantastic. And people remember the names of like Mike Tyson, and in the book there's some lovely dialogue in there where you hear a lot of bad things about Mike Tyson, but the book will introduce you to another side of Mike Tyson, the compassionate guy who would step out of his own press conference to go and give Paul a hug. He was at a time where people were giving Paul styrofoam cups because they were worried about getting the AIDS virus on there. Mike would come over and kiss him on the cheek. He could not care less. That's the sort of outpouring of love that Mike Tyson was showing out there. And these guys were training, on the same team, and they both turned pro. There's a conversation in there with Paul and Mike, where Mike sort of approaches Paul and said, "You're going to turn pro?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm not sure. I'm thinking about it." And so Tyson turns pro first, and then very soon after, Banke turns pro. So Paul Banke was a very, very high functioning boxer, and to be world champion is incredible. If I was to jump in the ring right now and do and try and have a fight with Paul Banke, the fight would last around 12 seconds, and that includes a 10 count.
Yes.
That's a different one, right?
This is Ruben.
Yeah, but
how do you follow up from that?
kids, whatever you do, any sport is good. Any sport is good. Any sport, don't matter. If you want to shoot marbles, you want to be a rapper, artist, you want to be a singer, you want to be an actor, whatever you want, anything. Any sport is great. I don't care if bowling. Any sport is good. Just keep doing what you're doing. Keep practicing, and you get better and better. So if you want to be a teacher, I'm here to learn from her today. I'm old school, but she's a teacher. I'm gonna come here and pick her brain too. But it don't matter what any sport you do, it don't matter what. You know, if you want to be an artist, rapper, singer, draw things, whatever. You want to be construction worker, be the best. You keep going, no matter what. You're gonna have all these obstacles coming your way. Everything's gonna come at you, all peer pressure. And being a young kid today in high school, I feel bad in a way because of peer pressure these days. These kids in school, because everybody knows what's going on in school these days. It's crazy now. In California, it's accepted now. Marijuana. It's not cool, right? We can't say that. But, it's not cool. But it is what it is. Just keep going. You get all these obstacles. Just keep going in life. Keep going no matter what.
That's right. And use sports as an outlet to get better, to go somewhere. Because the reality is that one in a million or one in a billion kids, made it to the pros. But you may be that one, right? But use it as an outlet, as a stepping stone to keep going, to get a scholarship, to keep working on your grades and keep working on your craft, whatever it is. Like you said, could be drawing, could be writing, could be boxing, could be whatever. So use it as a stepping stone to get better and to go somewhere, because it is important. And once you are a pro, make sure you are you stay humble and you stay with no drugs, stay with good company, and choose your friends. So what I was trying to say also, that Paul said he never was a gang member. He never had, those kind of friends, because he always used boxing as a shelter, to shelter himself, to protect himself from the outside, because he didn't have, a dad to look after him. Right. So the sports, it was kind of like his way to stay safe. And to be somebody, and to travel, to know the world as well. So,
right.
It's essential. There's a great quote from, I think, the first book I ever wrote, where the protagonist of the story, he says, "Where I grew up," he said, "you either did two things." So you did one of three things. He said, "You either boxed, You learn how to kick a ball, which was football, soccer, as you guys call it. And or the third alternative being you ended up in prison, and that was it. So if you're going to take up one of the sports, the only advice I would give, as with everything, all the disciplines, like Paul was saying, whether you're going to be a rapper, an artist, whatever, push yourself to the absolute limit, see what you've got, because there's a lot of people that will judge. There's a lot of people who will say things. Ignore all of these people. The person you need to listen to is the man in the mirror or the woman in the mirror, because that person is never going to lie to you. You can look in that mirror and say, did I give it my best? Did I give it 110%? And if you had, there's no shame in that. There's absolutely no shame at all. If you lost what you were trying to do, it doesn't matter at all. But when Paul was training to be champion of the world, that was no messing about. He was training like unbelievable. If there's any of you out there that are watching this who enjoy doing track and you enjoy running, at the time, Paul was doing 6 mile runs and nailing it in under 36 minutes. That's sub 6 minute miles on a 36 on a 6 mile circuit. If anyone's thinking about, sort of how fit he was and how he was doing it, that's the sort of level of fitness he was at. And he wasn't a runner. He wasn't a professional runner. He's just a damn fast runner, yes. But that stamina, he knew that when he was doing those runs, if he wasn't doing it, he was thinking, my opponent's doing it. Get it in faster, get it in harder, and that's it. So when he went into the ring and he fought Daniel Zaragoza, the Hall of Fame fighter, never been stopped before, and he stopped him in 9 rounds. And then Jimmy Lennon Jr. said, and a new WBC Super Bantamweight Champion of the world, the real Paul Banke. That was all of that adding up, all those years, from years and years and years before, and then bang, it culminated in this huge moment, an epic timeline, which no one can ever take away. And here he is right now, still a huge inspiration.
Can I just add something also? Hello?
Yes, we have 2 minutes. I would like, go ahead and finish it, Julieta.
Yes, I just want to, I'm also a teacher by education, and I always appreciate what all the teachers and educators are doing. And as a general, I want to say, everybody, physical education is the most important when we grow up in Bulgaria, Eastern Europe, all these countries. And every kid should do a sports regardless, boxing, any other sports. But in this case, even in Paul's case, every athlete, when you become good in your sport in schools and go to all the levels, you become, especially when you go international, you become ambassador. You're better than, like, politicians are ambassadors, but what athletes can do as an ambassadors to spread the goodwill, like you went to the 2-deck airplane and you start talking, you're an ambassador. You already created relations which nobody can create around the world. You went to Russia, I speak perfect Russian. I know how people talk, how people react. You inspire people. People appreciated you. Paul appreciated you as a writer and actually spread your greatness to, in a different extent. And what every student, everybody around the world wants is to be appreciated. So appreciation is the biggest thing. When people are not appreciated, when kids are not appreciated in schools, they're not encouraged, everything goes in a different direction. You appreciate it, you become an ambassador, you become an example for everybody, inspiration for writers, for the kids, for fashion, for behavior, for everything, for everybody. So everybody has a different, outlooks, and there's like, oh, I like this, I'm gonna become a writer, like Paul said, he became a writer, inspired. People say, oh, I like Paul's hat, I'm gonna be a designer. So you inspire people with your presence, and every athlete, it's a great ambassador. So the sport is the biggest thing. That's why you have the Olympic Games, the biggest stage where you step out there and it's you, your family. Yeah, you're from Mexico and you represent even the gang. People in the gangs, they're going to represent that, but in a positive way, that look at me, what I become from this and that. And that's what you prove. And so I always say sport, athletes are the biggest ambassadors, people, photographers, writers. Those are the ones who will really put the things on the picture and stay forever. So, you know, Paul is one of those great examples in a very, very difficult sport as boxing.
Yeah.
I know because of my brother, and I'm very appreciative what box can give you and box can take from you, because it's a very particular. So sorry to go over the minutes.
Thank you. Way to finish it. I know it's time to go to the next class. I want to say a quick goodbye, but everyone, thank you for being here. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and I hope you enjoyed it. Paul, take it away.
Thanks, everyone. Have a lovely Thanksgiving. Hope you eat lots of turkey, sweet potato, which I love, with all the marshmallows on. I'm salivating thinking about that. So I hope you really enjoy that. And thank you for the questions as well. And if you have any further questions, please pop them to Olga. Olga can send them to me in email. I'll send them back to Olga, and that's it. And it doesn't matter if you think of a question tomorrow, the day after, whenever it may be. I'd love to answer as many questions, or whether it be to do with writing or any other things. I mean, one of the things that when I'm in prisons that I talk about is about how nothing is impossible. People say to me, how did you get that interview with that person? I said, if they're alive and breathing on the planet, I will track them down. And it's a possibility that I can do that. And everything is a possibility if you've got the breath inside you to move forward, and every day you have the inspiration within yourself to do it. Nothing is impossible. Absolutely. Trust me, nothing is impossible. I've seen it happen. I've made it happen. And everything that you guys want to do can be done as well. So if you've got any questions at all, you just want to get out of your gut, pop into Olga, and I promise I'll answer them.
Thank you.
Thank you. What a way to finish. Awesome. Commander, you have any word, Keisha?
No, hey, you summed it all up, and I appreciate that inspiration. And I also love the potato pie that you said.
I wish I had some.
Great. Well, thank you for your time. We appreciate. I know it's late back in England, and
no, it's not. It's very early. It's tea time.
The opposite. The opposite.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's only 6 p.m. It's okay.
Yeah.